Angles 1 and 2 are the same angle moving in opposite directions. For all these, I'm going to be using my right foot forward, my left hand's going to be on my chest so it's out of the way, and the weapon's in my right hand. With the weapon in my right hand and my right foot forward, that brings my weapon closer to my opponent and gives me more of a reach with this thing. So technique number 1 is going to start from my shoulder, and I'm going to be striking my opponent's collarbone. It's going to come down at an angle to my opposite hip. I don't want it to stay there though, because that's how I'm going to get hit in my face. Once it hits my hip, I want it to come and rest next to my shoulder. This creates a no-brain block. From there, angle 2 is just going to travel the same direction, the opposite direction from the shoulder down to the opposite hip. And again, I don't want it to stay there. I want it to come all the way back up to the shoulder. Let's try 5 of these. Striking all the way through. Angle 1, all the way to the hip, bring it up to the shoulder. 2, down to the hip, bring it up to the shoulder. 2, 3, 4, 5, hit! Angles 3 and 4 are aimed at the lower abdomen. Starting with the right foot forward and the weapon in my right hand, it's going to start from my shoulder, but I'm going to lower it down to the level of my hip, and I'm going to strike all the way through to the opposite hip. When it gets there, I'm going to turn the hand over and draw it back the other way. When it's done, I want to bring it back up to my shoulder. Let's try a couple of those. Ready? 1, going to the left, turn it over, coming back to the right. Bring it back to the shoulder. 2, 3, 4, 5, hit! Angles 5 and 6 are both thrusting motions in 2 different levels. Angle 5 is thrusting into the abdomen or the ribs. Angle 6 is thrusting in a downward motion coming down to the meaty part of the shoulder between the shoulder blade and the collarbone. So with the weapon again in my right hand, my right foot forward, for angle 5, I bring it next to my hip, and then I thrust it out and I turn my palm up. Turning the palm up is important because if I've got a blade and I'm going straight, I'm going to get stuck on ribs. If I get the blade going flat, it'll slip between the bone to get to the tissue underneath. Once I finish that thrust, I want to bring it straight back. That's going to help me retrieve my blade. From there, number 6, I'm going to bring my hand right next to my temple. Look how it's coming off of my head, almost like an ox horn. From there, it's going to stab in a downward direction all the way through. You don't want to stop. You're going to bring it up right back next to your head so you have a no-brain block. Let's try that 5 times. So from a ready position, we're going to go stab, draw it back, up high, stabbing down all the way through next to the hip. Try that again. 2, stab low, draw back, stab high. 3, low, high. 4, 5, Angle 7, once I finished this stab, you notice how the stick would come back up next to this side of the head. Angle 7 can best be described as a back fist. I'm using the side of the blade or the side of the stick instead of the edge of the stick that lines up with my knuckles. And I'm going to be slapping either the side of my opponent's head, or if they've got a stick, I'm going to slap the stick out of the way. Now notice how it goes out and then I bring it right back next to the shoulder. I need it to get the blade out of the way and get myself to an angle where I can attack again. That's where technique number 8 is going to come into play. It's going to be the opposite of technique number 6. I take my hand over to the left side of my head and I'm going to angle the tip of it down a little bit, and I'm stabbing for that meaty part right between the collarbone and the shoulder blade. It's going to stab all the way through next to my hip. I don't want to stab short. So let's try 5 of those, starting with a weapon over on the left side pointing straight up. Angle 7, back fist straight up and down. 8 comes down at an angle all the way through. 2, back fist, stabbing down. 3, 4, 5, Angles 9 and 10 are almost the same as angles number 1 and 2, but instead of aiming for the shoulder, I'm going to be aiming for the leg or the knee. So again, starting with the hand over on the right-hand side, it's going to come next to my shoulder, and I'm going to be striking at a low angle. I'm going to bend my knees to get down there. I don't want to bend my back to get down there. I'm coming all the way next to the opposite side, and I'm going to bring it right next to my shoulder so I've got my no-brain block. From there, same thing. I'm going to squat down, and I'm going to aim for the leg, and I'm going to bring it back up. Let's try 5 of those. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Angles 11 and 12 are the opposite of angles 1 and 2. Starting from my ready position with my right hand forward, the stick is going to come back towards my right shoulder and then point down towards my right hip. From there, it's going to travel from the right up to the left shoulder. This is aiming either for the inside of somebody's thigh or even higher up underneath somebody's armpit. Once I've got it there, I don't want to leave it there. I want to bring it straight back to this up and down so I've got a nice shield that I can block with. From there, it's going to point down towards my left hip, and then it's going to drop up towards my right shoulder and then return back to a neutral position. Let's try 5 of those, starting from the neutral position, angling back to the right, and then up. 1, angling back to the left, and then up. 2, returning to a neutral position. 2, 3, 4, 5. Angles 13 and 14 are the same as angles 3 and 4, but instead of being aimed at the abdomen, we're going to be aiming higher towards the eyes or the top of the forehead. So starting with the weapon in the right hand, I'm going to have my left hand on my chest. I'm going to be bringing the bottom of the stick up to point towards my opponent, and then I'm going to bring the top of the stick from the right all the way to the left-hand side. When I do, I don't want it to stay pointing this way. I want to bring it back to a neutral position. From there, to get the next angle, I'm going to bring the butt of the stick up, and then I'm going to bring it back the opposite way and then return it to a neutral position. Let's try 5 of those. From neutral, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Number 15 and 16 almost look like the same angle, but there is a subtle difference. So number 15 is just a straight down. This would be considered a outside circle that you learned at Purple Belt. I'm just going to take it from straight up. I'm going to strike straight from the top to the bottom, and I'm going to let it swing all the way back next to my shoulder. The other one is going to be almost the same angle, but now I'm going to bring the stick around the back of my head, and I'm going to come down like an angle 2, and they both work in together. Let's try 5 of those. Ready? 1, circling to the outside around the back of the head, coming down on their shoulder. 2, straight down and an angle. 3, 4, 5. Angle 17 has 2 different angles to it. An initial forward thrust and then a subsequent upward thrust. So I'll talk about where this technique came from. It was from when the Philippines were invaded by the Spaniards. They'd have these really hard breastplates. And the Filipinos started figuring out that if they sharpened the sticks and fire hardened them, or if they had steel and they could get a hold of a machete, if they reinforced it and shoved that as hard as they could into a flat spot of the armor, they could actually pierce through the armor. But if it didn't pierce through the armor, it would have the tendency to glance off. So that's where the secondary came in. They would then use the bottom of the stick to come up underneath the chin to knock the head back and cause him to go off balance and get stunned. So if you have the weapon in your dominant hand and that same foot forward, the way the motion would go is the hand would draw next to the hip, the other hand would set down on top. You do the initial forward thrust, and then you're going to lift the bottom till it goes up above your head. When you're done, you're going to return it back in front of you. Let's try that 5 times. Ready? 1. 2. Next to the hip, reinforce it, forward and then up. 3. 4. 5. 8. Angles 18 and 19 are almost the same as angles 15 and 16. Difference is that they're going to be an inside circle instead of an outside circle. So if we start with the weapon in the dominant hand and that side forward, I'm going to bring the stick over to my left-hand side. My first angle of attack, I'm just going to let gravity take over, but then I'm going to add my own power. I'm going to strike all the way through. Striking through is what creates that power. Notice when I'm done, I brought it all the way back next to my head to be able to cause protection. Once I finish that strike, I'm going to bring it around the back of my head, and then I'm going to angle down just like an angle number 1. And again, I don't want to just stop and let it bounce off. I want to strike all the way through and let it come back next to my face. Let's try 5 of those, bringing it over on the left-hand side. 1, straight angle down, bring it around the head, angle down like a number 1. When you're done, swing through, bring it back in front. 2, straight down, angle, all the way through. 3, 4, 5, Angles 20 and 21 are almost exactly the same as angles 6 and 8. The difference is, instead of it being a downward angle, these ones are going to come straight forward. They're coming in towards the eye. So for this one, we just finished this big strike from number 19, and we brought the hand back next to our head. So this is where my first strike's going to go. I'm going to take my palm, I'm going to put it right next to my face. Notice it gives me a little ox horn coming off the side of my head. This is going to help me aim the stick to go straight out. I'm going to bring my palm back next to my face. Once it's there, I'm just going to rotate my palm around. I'm going to bring the back of my hand next to my face. Now notice how that's giving me the opposite ox horn on this side. From there, I'm going to poke straight out, and then I'm going to bring it straight back. Once I'm done, I'm going to bring it back in front of me so I can use it to block if I need to. So let's try 5 of these combos. Ready? 1, next to the cheek. Straight out, straight back, rotate it, straight out, straight back, bring it back in front. 2, 3, 4, 5, 8. Angles 22 and 23 are the helicopter that you learned at Purple Belt. So if we take the weapon in our dominant hand and we put that side forward, to start this one, I'm going to lift the bottom of my stick and I'm going to point it at my opponent. The first angle is going to whip to the outside and strike through my opponent's head. I don't want it to just stop here, but notice I'm going to give an extra little bit of turn to my shoulders so I can strike all the way through. Once that's done, it's going to whip back around to go the other way. And again, I don't want to stop my shoulders because that's going to stop the stick right there. I want my hips and shoulders to turn all the way through so that my stick strikes through my opponent. That's where you're going to gain your power from. Let's try 5 of those. Ready? 1, lift it above your head, pointing that bottom forward. Turn your shoulder, bring it back in front. 2, lift it up. 3, turn your hips too, not just your shoulders. 4, 5, Angle 24 is a big two-handed overhead strike. This one was designed to be able to crack the helmet of the armor of the enemy they were fighting against. So with this one, if we again start with the weapon in the dominant hand with that side forward, I'm going to start by lifting the stick above my head. As it goes, my other hand is going to catch the bottom right where I left that space to be able to use as a tool. From there, I'm going to pull with the bottom hand and I'm going to push with the front hand to cause a big strike. I'm going to not just hit the helmet, but I'm going to hit the helmet. I'm going to strike all the way through to the ground. When I'm done, I'm going to bring the weapon back in front of me and put my other hand on my chest to bring it back to protection. Let's try that 5 times. Ready? 1, lift it up, grab it with the other hand, use your hips and shoulders all the way down, and then bring it back in front of you. 2, 3,